The sun dipped low over the gleaming waters of Lake Ndara, casting a burnt orange hue across the surface that shimmered like liquid glass. Liam Ryder sat on his balcony, sipping a cup of synth coffee and enjoying the peaceful lull that only a lakeside evening could bring. It was moments like this that made the decades of terraforming barren exoplanets worth it. He'd earned this. After years of harsh environments, failed ecosystems, and toxic storms, retirement in this tranquil Earthside neighborhood felt like a final reward. But that illusion shattered with a knock on the door. Liam opened it to find Karen Vexley, president of the Ndara Community HOA. Standing stiffly with her signature electric tablet in one hand and an ever-tight smile stretched across her face, her sharp bob haircut gleamed like the polished chrome of an old satellite. In her eyes were two chips of controlled arrogance. "Mr. Ryder," she began, "I'm here to inform you that Section 9B of the Community Lakeside Access Charter has been invoked." Liam blinked. "That's the one about community boat sharing, right? Not even in that program." Karen's smile widened just slightly, as if she enjoyed watching people step into bear traps they couldn't see. Not quite. It grants the HOA discretionary power to redistribute certain shoreline easements if they're deemed underutilized or of communal value. As of today, the 20 meters of lakefront adjacent to your dock have been reassigned. Liam's brow furrowed. Reassigned to who? Karen tapped the screen. Grant Vexley, my cousin. He's just moved in across the street. It was then that Liam noticed the sound of machinery whirring across the lake path. Giant nanobot constructors, shimmering like metal insects, were laying down molecular foundations on what used to be his private dock space. Grant, a hulking figure with mirrored ocular implants and a Martian accent, stood by with his arms crossed. Smirking in Liam's direction, "You've got to be kidding me," Liam said, stepping past Karen to see the full scope of the operation. "That shoreline's part of my deeded property. You can't just—" "Oh, but we can," Karen interrupted, her voice now lined with static authority. "The quantum deed ledger has been updated. Feel free to submit an appeal, though I should warn you, the processing time is currently 46 months. Liam clenched his jaw. The QDL was supposed to be immutable, verified across dozens of legal AIs, and anchored by EarthGov protocols. If Karen had managed to override that, then this wasn't just petty politics. This was something bigger. As Karen strutted away, heels clicking against the polymer path, Liam stood frozen, watching the lake he'd fallen in love with slowly transform. The dock was now being overtaken by aggressive nanobots, reconfiguring it into something unrecognizable. Signs that once marked the edge of his property were torn down. And no neighbors, no automated enforcers, no security drones seemed to care. But Liam wasn't built for helplessness. He didn't survive 20 years shaping atmospheres on dead rocks without learning how to fight back. He didn't yell. He didn't protest. He simply turned around, walked into his workshop, closed the door. The room was dim, cluttered with old tools, spare components from interstellar expeditions, and defunct tech no one remembered how to use. But Liam remembered. He'd kept blueprints, schematics, and notes, some from his own projects, others from old friends now buried under alien suns. He'd been to worlds that tried to kill him every day. If Karen Vexley wanted a power play, she had no idea the kind of storm she'd just summoned. With calm, deliberate motion, Liam activated the terminal in the center of the room and began sketching out his response. Not a weapon, not a lawsuit, something far more elegant. A fence. The soft glow of Liam's terminal cast sharp shadows across his workshop, flickering as lines of code raced across the screen. He sat motionless, eyes locked on a three-dimensional projection of the quantum deed ledger, the immutable registry of land ownership upheld by the United Earth Accord. In theory, it was incorruptible, quantum-signed, triple-backed, across multiple interstellar ledgers. But what he saw didn't match reality. His plot, originally marked as Ryder Parcel 7, L Primary Shoreline, 28 meters, now read Vexley Parcel Community Adjunct Zone. The timestamp had been modified exactly 48 hours ago. More disturbingly, the validator node signature wasn't EarthGov's, or even local HOA servers. It came from a Martian sovereign ledger. Unauthorized, unlinked, and illegal. Liam's hands flew across the haptic interface as he ran a verification trace. He needed to be sure. As the layers peeled back, he saw the telltale signs of synthetic interference, ghost entries, broken validation, chains, and an AI-generated metadata trail designed to mimic authentic updates. Whoever had done this didn't just forge the record, they had rewritten history at the end foundational level. Karen wasn't just abusing HOA power. She was using black market quantum forensics tech, the kind banned in every civilized system for its ability to forge reality itself. He leaned back, breath slow and steady. This wasn't personal anymore. This was bigger. If she could do this to him, she could do it to anyone. Outside, Grant Vexley's construction continued unabated. A symphony of worry nanobots danced across Liam's former shoreline, reshaping it into something foreign and invasive. Transparent plasteel walkways stretched like spider legs over the water, while floating drones projected holographic private property signs in bold crimson letters. The entire dock was morphing into a sleek off-world design, cold and sterile. Nothing like the hand-carved pier Liam had built with his own tools and sweat. Grant supervised from a reclining hover chair. Sipping from a chrome flask, his ocular implants glowing faintly. Occasionally he'd chuckle as neighborhood kids approached, and were turned away by repulsion fields. Once, he even waved at Liam. Moke. Liam didn't wave back. Instead, he went to work. In the lower section of his workshop, beneath rusted tool racks and aging drone parts, sat a reinforced vault. He hadn't opened it in years, the breath and a biometric scan. The doors hissed open to reveal crates marked with old Expedition logos, remnants of forgotten research missions to the moons of Ander, Kepler-49, and the Red Sieve. Inside were the rarest of components: deflector crystals, gravity matrix cores, even a phased harmonic emitter salvaged from a dead alien outpost. He selected a set of pulsing micrograv pylons devices, once used to anchor temporary fields on unstable asteroids. Paired with chronothreading processors and perception filter lenses, they could do something far more interesting on Earth, warp space and time within a localized boundary. He sketched the beginnings of a new structure, a barrier not made of metal or wood, but of bent dimensions. A fence, yes, but one that would challenge the very senses of anyone who tried to cross it. It wouldn't harm them, not physically, but it would confuse, disorient, and repel. They'd see reflections of their own fears, lose track of direction, even experience minor time drift. All reversible, all perfectly legal technically. He smiled for the first time in days. Back on the surface, Karen was already boasting too. Local residents that Grant's dock would bring property value, enhancements, and communal prestige. She handed out flyers, summoned the neighborhood's maintenance drones to clear debris from Liam's lot debris that happened to include antique solar buoys and fish-attracting sculptures he'd built himself. They thought he was beaten. They thought his silence meant surrender. But deep in the belly of his home, Liam Ryder was preparing something elegant, something terrifying, and no one, especially Karen Vexley, would see it coming. The construction began quietly. No official announcements. No HOA notifications. Just a low hum emanating from Liam's property late at night, barely noticeable over the soft lapping of the lake. The neighbors assumed he was tinkering against some small drone project or atmospheric calibrator. Nothing out of the ordinary. After all, Liam had always been that eccentric, quietly brilliant man who never made a fuss. But within 48 hours, something strange began to take shape at the edge of his now reduced lawn. The fence, as Liam called it, did not resemble any conventional structure. There were no posts, no planks, no wires. Instead, slender rods the size of reeds were anchored in a perfect arc, spaced precisely 1.618 meters apart, the golden ratio. Each one shimmered faintly with a translucent energy field that pulsed in sync with the lake's natural rhythm. They didn't just stand still, they hummed with life, flickering between visibility and invisibility depending on the angle of the sun or, perhaps, the angle of perception itself. On the third day, the anomalies began. Mrs. Hensley, from 2 doors down, swore she saw her late husband standing behind the fence, smiling at her before vanishing into mist. A teenager biking near the barrier suffered a brief blackout and awoke with sunburns he couldn't explain. Birds veered violently away from it mid-flight, their wings shimmering oddly as they passed near the field. Even the community maintenance drones refused to cross, it looping endlessly around Liam's parcel. Their navigational algorithms seemingly scrambled. By the end of the week, the neighborhood buzzed with curiosity and thinly veiled panic. HOA members whispered about it over espresso in the communal lounge. Karen, visibly agitated, held an emergency meeting by the lakeside gazebo, insisting that the fence violated several unspecified aesthetic regulations. "This is not within code," she barked, holding up a digital tablet that flickered with broken links and corrupted documentation. "This is sabotage," Grant growled, pointing at Liam's house with a trembling mechanical finger. "I'll have it torn down. I'll call in a federal override if I have to." Liam appeared then, calm as ever, standing just outside his porch, sipping coffee as if nothing in the world was unusual. "You're welcome to try," he said softly. "But you might want to rethink walking through that field unless you've got a temporal anchor and an extra pair of underpants." Karen stormed toward the property line, tablet in hand, demanding that the fence be disabled pending investigation. But as she crossed within a meter of the field, the air shimmered. She froze mid-step. Her tablet sparked, then melted in her hands like wax. For a brief moment, her face reflected pure awe, and possibly terror. She turned and stumbled back, speechless, eyes wide and unblinking. Rumors spread fast after that. Some said the fence was alive. Others claimed Liam had uncovered alien tech and was experimenting with consciousness loops. A few feared it was a weapon designed to erase people from time entirely. But the truth was far stranger, and far simpler. Liam had taken the very principles of space-time, manipulation used to stabilize collapsing moons and compress them into a visual field no wider than a backyard fence. It's not to hurt, not to destroy, but to protect. To make a statement that couldn't be ignored. He had rewritten the rules of a game. Karen thought she'd won, and everyone who looked at that shimmering boundary understood one thing. The Lakefront war was no longer about property. It was about power. And Liam had just changed the battlefield, Karen. Vexley's pride had always been her sharpness, her uncanny ability to maneuver through regulations, like a predator through brush. But the fence had rattled her. She didn't say it aloud, of course. She called it optical interference, technological vandalism, and even visual pollution. But the way she hesitated every time she walked near Liam's property spoke volumes. Something about the fence unnerved her in a way that no legal clause or artificial intelligence ruling could fix. The HOA offices, once a quiet administrative annex near the community center, transformed overnight into a war room. Karen convened a special committee, made up of the most rule-happy residents in the neighborhood people, who got excited about grass-length violations and recycling bin placement. She armed them with data packets and retroactive policy edits. Their target? Find a bylaw Liam had broken. Any bylaw. When that failed, she escalated. She called in the HOA enforcement mechs, a recent and controversial addition to the community's governance. They were repurposed security drones tall, sleek humanoid machines with scanner visors, legal databases hardwired into their neural mesh, and stun pulse capabilities for mediation only. Residents had laughed when they were first rolled out. Now, no one was laughing. The mechs marched toward Liam's property at dawn, silent and gleaming under the early sunlight. They reached the perimeter of the fence and paused. What happened next was caught on dozens of household drones and smart window feeds. As the first mech stepped into the invisible zone of the fence, its entire posture shifted. It froze, then twitched, violently. Its scanner visor flared bright white before it let out a sound like distorted screaming. And then, without warning, it vanished. simply ceased to exist. A burst of static filled the air where it had stood. The second mech, attempting to retreat, instead staggered backward, only to crumple to the ground as if its internal gyroscope had been twisted into nonsense. The third turned and fled entirely, sending a final transmission. System integrity. Breach. Recalculating year. That footage went viral within hours. News feeds, even those from off-world colonies, picked it up. Suburban man builds reality-warping fence. The headlines read, "Time-bending border leaves AI enforcers glitched and missing." The fence wasn't just a local curiosity. Now it was an interplanetary phenomenon. By nightfall, 2 investigative AS from the networked Free Press Consortium arrived. They weren't machines in the traditional sense, more like autonomous presence fields that manifested as glowing orbs and spoke through whichever interface was closest. They interviewed Liam, floated silently around the fence, and compared data from the quantum deed ledger. With their own secure archives, their findings were damning. Karen's so-called transfer of shoreline rights wasn't just illegal. It was a full-scale breach of interplanetary property law, forged using Mars-based sovereign credentials not authorized on Earth. Worse yet, the manipulation wasn't isolated. The A has uncovered a pattern a dozen cases across the past 5 years where land had been mysteriously reassigned, always ending up in the hands of relatives, investors, or shell companies connected to Karen. Within 24 hours, the United Ethics Tribunal initiated a formal review. Karen's HOA authority was suspended pending investigation. Grant Vexley, now terrified of the fence, hadn't stepped outside his home since the mech incident, but Liam didn't gloat. He didn't throw a party or wave a flag. Instead, he added one last touch to the fence, a pulsing blue band at the base, just visible to the naked eye, encoded with one message. This line is not just the edge of a yard. It's the boundary between arrogance and accountability. The community, once suspicious of Liam, now watched him with quiet reverence. He had done what no one else dared. He held power to account, not with force, but with invention, patience, an unbreakable resolve, and his shimmering fence untouched, breached it as proof that justice could be engineered. The morning after the tribunal announcement, the neighborhood felt like it had shed a second skin. The artificial lake, once a stage for Karen's HOA pageantry and Grant's flashy parties and planning, lay quiet. Even the air seemed clearer, as if the strange forces emanating from Liam's fence had rearranged not just space, but something deeper: expectation, authority, fear. Karen Vexley had gone silent. Her house sat dark and sealed, with privacy filters, blocking every drone or optical probe. Word around the neighborhood was that she'd attempted to flee off-world the night before, but was intercepted mid-transit by a suborbital ethics enforcement team. The community watched as her status was scrubbed in real time. Title revoked, position nullified, legal immunities revoked. Just like that, the empire she had built on intimidation and bureaucracy crumbled to ash. Grnt. Vexley didn't fare much better. Terrified of crossing Liam's fence again, he made one last attempt to assert control, this time by trying to interface his property drones with the boundary field. Perhaps he thought he could scan it, decode it, maybe even override it. But what his system failed to understand was that the fence wasn't just built to protect it. Responded. Neighbors watched from their windows as a section of the fence shimmered, pulsed, and unfolded into a curtain of mirrored air. The drones. Grant sent forth stuttered, spiraled, and fell into the lake like insects swatted by time itself. Grant, foolishly stepping forward to retrieve a control node, crossed the shimmer and vanished. There was no noise, no explosion. One moment, he was there. The next, gone. The ripples in the air folded inward and sealed behind him. All that remained was a faint chamand, a single metallic eye, still glowing faintly, bobbing in the lake. Later, Liam would tell the ethics board he hadn't designed the fence to do that Grant must have triggered a failsafe by attempting an unauthorized override. They believed him, mostly because the truth was, not even Liam fully understood how the fence had evolved since its activation. It had begun as a boundary, but with so many dimensional components interacting, It had grown. Learned, responded. The United Ethics Tribunal offered Liam full restoration of his property, plus a public apology and the removal of all prior HOA infractions from the record. He accepted on one condition, that the fence remain, not as a barrier anymore, but as a monument. They agreed. Weeks later, the fence still stood. The shimmering pulses were dimmer now, more peaceful. The anomalies ceased. Birds once again circled the lake. Even the community maintenance drones resumed their tasks, cautiously moving around the perimeter. The strange sense of unease had lifted, replaced by something closer to reverence. Liam declined interviews, though offers came from everywhere. EarthGov science councils, Martian think tanks, interstellar property rights networks. He'd done his part. He wasn't interested in fame, only peace. He spent his days in the garden now, restoring the patches of soil the construction bots had mangled. Wildflowers were returning to the shoreline. He even rebuilt the old dock, piece by piece, the same way he had the first time by hand. Each board was sanded smooth, bolt tightened with care. Sometimes neighbors came but not to intrude, but to quietly offer help or just sit nearby. No one mentioned the fence. No one had to. One evening, as Liam sat on his dock watching the light fade across the water, the fence shimmered one last time. A soft ripple rolled through it. No threat, no distortion. It's just a low, harmonic tone that faded into the night like a lullaby from another world. He smiled, because in the end, the fence had never been about keeping people out. It had always been about showing them where the line was and reminding them what happened when they dared to cross it.